Wow, that's a fancy chair. Is that like an actual gamer chair?
Yeah. Listen, my chiropractor recommended it, so.
Is that the line we're going with, is it?
it's for medical purposes, okay?
Welcome back to Radio Juxtapoz. My name is Doug Gillen, and today we are stepping out of our comfort zone to question our sense of self, reality, and the unseen world around us with New York-based artist Emma Stern. Lava Baby, as she's known on Instagram, we'll come to that later on, appropriates and subverts the virtual language used in the spaces we occupy through digitally rendered characters and environments which are then traditionally painted onto canvas. Beyond the fantasy of her candy-soaked sunsets and hypersexualized pirates, pinups and mermaids lies a deep understanding and affection to the culture that she lifts from. Over the next hour, Evan Preco and myself join Emma from her studio in New York. Emma also happens to be one of the featured artists in the forthcoming issue of Juxtapoz magazine, so keep an eye on the Juxtapoz Instagram for updates on that one. Everything else will be revealed to you in good time. That is it from me. Enjoy the episode. Where are you just now?
I'm in New York right now. This is where I am allegedly based most of the time. Haven't been spending too much time here lately, but this is the mothership. This is my studio, my home.
So what's with the air quotes allegedly here?
Oh yeah. No, I've been all over for the past couple of years. Seems like I haven't really been spending much time here. I just did a long residency at Molef Studios in Los Angeles for 3 months, and then I picked up and went to Europe for a bit and did another quick little residency there. And now I'm back. I'm here until the winter, and then who knows what.
How does it feel being sort of settled and in one place? Do you feel comfortable with that, or does that bring a sense of restlessness with it?
No, on the contrary, I think I'm a Cancer, so it's I don't know that you're supposed to.
That means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I know. Can you? You're going to have to break us down.
Absolutely nothing.
I have no idea.
It doesn't mean much to me either, but I think that what they say about Cancers is they're like shellfish, and they like to bring their homes with them. I'm kind of consider myself a bit of a homebody, but I always push myself to kind of be outside my comfort zone. And I think if I wasn't actively trying to push myself and discipline myself, I think I would just be in one place all the time. But it's been really good for me, I think, to kind of learn how to set up studios and learn how to work wherever, really. The work, people ask does the work change depending on where you're located geographically?
Thanks. That was actually going to be my next question. So
yeah, well, since I've been asked that, I've had to think about it a bit. And the thing is, the work that I make, it's, I've started thinking of it as a universe creation project, and it's totally decentralized. And so it's not I'm working with different models or in different, painting different environments, different scenes, I'm not a plein air painter, I'm not doing landscapes. So it's decentralized, and so this whole little universe is totally based in cyberspace. So it really doesn't change very much. I feel maybe when I was spending a lot of time in LA, maybe the LA colors kind of crept in a little bit, this kind of sunsetty palette. But really, it's so subtle. If that, I was based in London for a little while, and it was the winter, and it's pretty bleak, and I wound up doing a lot of interior scenes. And so I think maybe subtle ways like that, maybe the environment creeps in, but really it's it's all in cyberspace at the end of the day.
In a grander sense, what then does inform you and influence you?
I think all artists are really collectors, and I certainly would say so about myself. I collect a lot of imagery that I'm attracted to, and I collect little tidbits of information and knowledge that I kind of will have this completely incoherent stream of consciousness in my notes app, and all these insane folders on my desktop that I'm sure are extremely concerning to my NSA agent who's assigned to me. But yeah, I think really it's the web detritus and cool little things that speak to me in one way or another, I think. And also another answer to this question could be like I really do feel like I'm painting myself. Like it's, the women that I paint, they're avatars. I adoringly refer to them as lava babies, but they're avatars, and they're my avatars because I make them. And so they are kind of this extended self-portraiture project in a way. And so I really am like pulling a lot from my own memories and fantasies and experiences. I talk a lot about how there's this kind of inherent drag element. I'm like really into like drag queens and stuff. And I think that I'm not really speaking specifically about gender here in like the traditional sense of the word drag, but I really do think that like my most recent show that I did in New York City was it was all sexy pirates. And that's my pirate drag. If I were a pirate, this is what I would look like. To answer your question, I think, where does it come from? I think a lot of it's internal, but also internal by way of a lot of external influences.
So tell us, what was the genesis of the Lava Babies?
Right around the time I got interested in virtual character creation and like greater concept of avatar, virtual selfhood, I was sort of playing with this software, and I really like, my formal training is totally and just very traditional oil on canvas figure painting. And so I really had no background in any kind of new media or like any kind of CAD or anything really. And so I'm like learning from YouTube tutorials, and when you start with any, or at least in my experience, the kind of first thing you do when you first start playing with any kind of virtual sculpting is you start with this ball of virtual clay, and it's this kind of default gray. It's like a little bit plasticky looking. And also like at the time I was like very into Carl Jung, and I was reading about like a lot of what he had to say about this idea of quicksilver. It's this amorphous material that can take the form any shape. It's a shape-shifting material. And so I was connecting those two things. And I just started calling this material lava because virtual clay just sounded kind of dumb. I don't know. I just, I like to make up my own names for things. And so I started calling it lava. And then a friend of mine started calling me Lava Baby, and it kind of stuck. And then the characters that I started creating became the Lava Babies because they're made out of lava. It was an extremely organic, unintentional branding that I did way early on. So
wait, so okay, you mentioned Carl Jung. You mentioned that you're traditionally like a figure painter in a traditional sense. You've got a video game chair that you're sitting in. Usually people who are into that, like they grow up interested in that kind of stuff, but it seems like you came at it at a different time, different angle.
Yeah. I mean, I contain multitudes, first of all, but
okay. Well, let's go back to, there we go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I was always interested in technology. Like I was raised pretty religiously. And so I think that
religiously or religiously in tech?
Religiously, like in the traditional sense. I have a very religious father, and like when I was younger, I like totally rejected all of the organized religion outright. But I kind of, as an adult, like I don't know. I really think the two things are connected. I think it's religion and getting interested in transhumanism and artificial intelligence and like all of these kind of things all these buzzwords we're hearing lately. Like I think that all of it is just people who are attempting to explain the big questions. We all know what they are. But I think I kind of, when I got interested in technology as an artist, I think it was in some way connected to this like yearning to understand things and kind of work it out visually through my painting, because that's my first language, really. It's like that's the language I speak. I'm not gonna start learning how to program or write code, but I spent 16 years learning how to paint, basically. So this is the language I'm speaking here. I always had an interest, and when I started learning about this stuff, it absolutely lit me up.
And it was kind of a space that's traditionally, let's just use it, it's kind of traditionally a male space, tech.
Yeah, for sure. And when I speak about this, which I'm happy to speak about, but I'm always like very careful to not be overly critical, because at the end of the day, like you're right. This is a more software and technology have traditionally, historically been more male dominated, and I think I think it is changing, but like all things, it's changing quite slowly. But so the visual vocabulary that exists, like cyberspace is being populated with virtual females who are either designed by or being played by or both by perhaps non-female players, and so
diplomatic.
That's where I was going with that. So cool. All right, I'm glad you're going with it.
Yeah. And then again, we're talking about the drag element there. It's like a lot of like men are playing in drag, or like
playing with their dolls.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I think, and it's not so different from what we've done IRL, is that it's just kind of like it's moving it's accelerated a lot faster. So the visual language and kind of virtual females have been designed perhaps without a lot of women in the room, so to speak. But I think what's happened just on a purely aesthetic level is like totally fascinating to me. And that's why I'm careful to not be overly critical, because at the end of the day, like these tropes that maybe have, would historically have been associated with misogyny, it's like at the end of the day, this is like pleasing on a primitive level to look at, and I would rather acknowledge that than pretend it's not there or remove myself from it. Because even as I make these paintings, I'm choosing pieces of that to perpetuate or uphold or kind of reinterpret or subvert even. I don't know how successfully, but I mean, these tropes are fun and silly and sexy, and that's the art that I want to see. And so I'm not gonna like use this visual vocabulary and pretend I'm criticizing it, when in reality I really enjoy it a lot and dedicated my career to upholding pieces of it.
If we take this idea then of like this imagery, what changes between you creating a woman that looks like that and me creating a woman like that? Inherently, what is the difference?
Oh, I don't really think a lot changes. I mean, I have a big problem when people start talking about like the male gaze. Like, I think it maybe once was more relevant than it is now, but I think the more female artists who exist and the more female artists who kind of admit some kind of like base level attraction to these tropes, to these images, like I think in a way it green lights it. Like, I don't think that there is something inherently problematic or offensive about sexiness, like in any sense of the word. And I think it's been problematized perhaps for good reason, because of the historical implications of, you know, female objectification. But I think there is a reclamation happening, and it's not that the image changes depending on who makes it. I mean, that's like a whole conversation we can have, and I'm not actually sure which side of that I'd fall on, but I would like to kind of like detangle what I think is perceived as like an inherent issue with sexiness, because I don't think it actually needs to be there.
You talked earlier about you kind of on this almost religious quest to understand the self. Have you gotten any closer?
No, I think I've gotten farther, but that's the fun of it.
How come?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it's like I got really into Alan Watts when I was like in my early 20s, and he has this, gosh, I hope I can remember this correctly, but he has this great lecture, and he talks about the stronger and stronger and more powerful your telescopes get, the bigger space becomes. And then you're like, okay, now like finish the map. But it's like the more powerful your instruments of measurements get, the bigger, and it goes in the opposite direction as well. The inverse would be the more and more powerful your microscopes get. And we're kind of seeing this in real time. It's like where we thought like an atom was the smallest physical particle that could be observed, it's like now we're in like quarks and gluons and like you can imagine it just gets big, everything gets bigger and everything gets smaller in both directions. And I don't know, people who are simulation theorists would say that it's like, you know, like the rendering speed is just getting faster, and again, another conversation. But see what I mean?
Yeah, no, but so that means like in your
worse and worse.
I mean, I love that idea, because it's like in the terms of a painter, if you embrace that idea, it just means that you have possibilities forever.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, yeah, how cool is that?
No, because most people would say, like, if I get really into the nuance of it, like they kind of like it cripples them a little bit, but it doesn't seem to cripple you at all.
No, not at all. Like, I used to be like terrified of running out of ideas, but that's just because I wasn't actually interested in anything.
I like that.
I don't know, like maybe it's this, maybe I am having like a quasi-religious experience, but I mean, I feel super inspired every day. And like, I get to, I don't know, like you said something before about like playing with dolls, and I really do feel like that's what I'm doing on some level, except for the doll is like me and these kind of like infinite iterations of myself, and I get to play with really powerful, cool technology to do that, and I feel so lucky that I get to wake up and do this every day. It's kind of insane. It's like if I needed any proof that I was living in a simulation, I mean, this is the world I would build. So hey.
What did you play with when you were a kid?
I played with dolls, but I also like played with like worms and dirt. People ask me all the time if I was like a really big gamer when I was growing up, and no, I wasn't, because my family was like pretty strict, and like I could only watch like an hour of TV a day. But I think what that did actually is kind of create this like almost like fetishistic view of video games, because I was like so just like aesthetically like so enamored, because this thing that was so far from me, and it had this taboo built around it. And I remember, I don't know, I must have been like 10 years old maybe, and me and my sister found a Game Boy Advance on an airplane, and we hid it from my parents for 6 months. And there was just so much like buildup around it, and it had like one game in it. You know, it was this like treasure that I like held on to. And I think somehow that's like stayed with me. And then as an adult, like getting interested in virtual selfhood, there's got to be some connection there, because I really grew up without it, but kind of like wishing for it and like fetishizing it.
Do you remember the first avatar you fell in love with?
I'm not sure how I would define an avatar, because it's like anytime you make something, I mean even a painting is like kind of a analog avatar. I mean, because I'm a firm believer everything you make is a self-portrait, even if it's a piece of music or it's abstract. But I guess I understand the question you're asking, and I was really into Neopets, and I made a Neopet that I think was named Kimmy or something. It was like a pink cow, and you know, I was pretty obsessed for sure. But then
I was gonna jump onto this actual fundamental process for you, like, because it's paintings of 3D renders that you're creating. So that initial, you're using what, and then you've got the clay model, but then from there, where does it go?
Yeah, I mean, without getting like too specific of like how the sausage gets made, I'm using
Wait, is that proprietary or something?
Are you not being specific because you don't want other people doing it, or are you worried it might be boring?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, I'm like when people reach out to me, and I'm like pretty open about like, I mean, I'm not doing anything that like truly proprietary, but I have had there's biters out there, you know it.
2022.
It's cool because, like, you know, thousands of people will listen to this, so it's good.
No, I don't want to like gatekeep. I taught myself all this shit from YouTube tutorials. It's not hard. The learning is the journey, isn't it? But
you've got some fucking quotes on this fucking podcast. I love it.
Just shelling them out.
I'm just like a Twitter bot incarnate. I'm using like a character design software, and then I am like exporting it into another software called Cinema 4D that's mostly for, like, most people use it for animation. It's an incredibly powerful piece of software that I feel like I've barely scratched the surface on, but that's where I do more of like the kind of world building, so to speak. Like more the most of the stuff happens that's like environmental, and then when I do kind of like the lighting and kind of like, that's where like I build like the room or the environment that the figure lives in.
Were you learning like this kind of idea of cinematic lighting? I find that really interesting.
And especially for the pirate show, like it seemed like the lighting got real You really nailed it.
Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, I spent a lot of time on it, and I mean, I think really it's an example of where the tools you use really start to inform the way the thing looks, because it's like I'm dealing with this, you know, I mentioned I learned to paint in like a very traditional way where it'd be like a model in the studio and you'd set up a spotlight, or maybe there's like a more ambient light or like whatever. But then like now all of a sudden I'm dealing with software and I can like make a sun, like and it's like all these like very like advanced, like, and as I said, this software is like it's Cinema 4D is a crazy piece of equipment, but and I barely scratched the surface. But it's kind of like get a little religious here, but like the book of Genesis, like that's creation mythology. It's like the universe kind of starts with a light and then becomes more complicated, like the more elements you add into it over time. I really do feel that way. Like I keep referring to this as a world building project, but it truly is. And so like the more fluent I've become with the software, the more complicated I can make these environments. And so the lighting is something that I've like kind of recently like started spending more time on and trying to really get a more masterful understanding of. And yeah, for the pirate show, like I knew that this was going to be something that took place outdoors. And so I really wanted to learn about like how to simulate sunlight. And some of those paintings, interestingly, have multiple light sources. Like it's actually
there's two suns.
But it's like, why the hell not? It's like my universe. And I'm the only thing.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to make a gorgeous painting. And so, and like, who cares if there's two suns? Like, I don't think anyone's truly checking up on this.
It's like there's a fucking mermaid in there. There can be two suns.
It's fine.
The woman's a fish.
Yeah, totally.
It's your world.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't like it, you can make your own.
With your shitty one sun.
Have you seen her painting, Jim, the building? There's shadows coming from two different directions. What? Are there two suns?
Come on.
Last I checked, that's not an office building in the Andromeda galaxy.
Exactly. No, but that's been kind of like the coolest thing for me. It's like not just like I can, you know, like create these kind of extended self-portraits that are, you know, biologically, physically impossible, like the body of a horse and like the head of like an anime girl wearing a bikini. But it's like, okay, there's that. And then there's the environmental version of that, which is like two suns and everything is like fuchsia and shiny and made of plastic. And as I said, like the more confidence and fluency I develop with the tools that I'm using, the more complex and exciting the actual universes get. And like, you know, as we were saying before, like how could I not feel inspired by that? It's like every time I learn something new, it's like a brand new tangent I can go off on. Like I feel like I want to get life extension just so I can make all these paintings.
But yeah, the key here is that you paint it. In the end, there's also this other part of the process that you paint very well.
Thanks.
Do people talk enough with you about the actual painting process, or do they want to know the stuff before?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's like a pretty mixed bag. I mean, the reason that I'm like painting this stuff is because, like I said before, it's my first language. It's like the language I'm like most able to clearly communicate. But also, like having this background in like very traditional painting, like it's important to me. And, you know, and when I refer to this as a self-portraiture project, like I mean that in a contemporary, but also in a very traditional sense. And I really want these paintings to interact with the history of art and the history of portraiture and self-portraiture specifically. And the visual vocabulary I'm using, I talk about these folders on my desktop and all of the different like super niche micro internet subcultures that I'm spend a lot of time looking at and learning about, weird little corners of the internet. And then for some reason, as soon as you put something, like render something oil on canvas and you hang it on the wall of an art gallery, all of a sudden there's discourse, right? Which like doesn't really exist on a message board or on like some erotic 3D art web page. I don't know, like wherever you find this stuff. I think it's pretty cool to, when you change the context of something drastically and then watching the rhetoric and like the the people who like write reviews of this like, big titty anime horse girl.
To watch the world burn.
Yeah, and like that's like the erotic pirate fantasy is like getting reviewed in art forum now. So it's like I don't know, that's like my fun little joke I'm playing with myself.
Are you a voyeur in these little dark corners, or are you a participant? I mean, are you a participant in the way that you're creating the art based off that, but within these worlds, like where are you sitting in that terms of that role?
I guess I'm a voyeur, and like I don't know if I'm like totally comfortable with that. Like I kind of wish I was participating a little bit more. I remember like very early on, before I was making my lava babies from scratch, I was kind of, when I was learning how to like do this and sort of figuring out what part of it was interesting to me, I was using a lot of like pre-made models that other people had made and kind of posted for like free download. And I did like 4 paintings based on this one figure that like some guy had posted. It's just like some like, naked lady like laying on the ground. And I did 4 giant paintings of it. And I reached out to the original poster. I like sent a message and I was like, hi, I'm an artist. I live in New York City. Like, yeah, I made these paintings. I thought you might want to see. And this guy like never answered me. And I just...
You never go back.
You like, really? No. But like, why? Like most people truly, and this might be shocking, most people really don't give a fuck about painting. Like I think it's like really like, it's like a very like specific like world we're in, and we care a lot about it.
When you take a step out of this art world and you start explaining to people what you do, what you write about, what you're painting, people are like,
no, it's so true. Like,
yeah, but what's your real job?
Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly. I was at a family function not long ago, and like one of my like mom's friends was like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm an artist. I'm a painter." And they're like, "Oh, that's so amazing. But how about for work? Like, what do you do? What do you do for work?" And I was like, I'm a graphic designer. Like,
exactly.
Whatever.
What would you like me to be? Because I'll just be that, and we'll just have a nice little dinner party.
You just mentioned about family there, and I kind of wanted to touch on this earlier. You talk about your dad being quite religious, and this is quite, it's sexy, quite erotic, borderline imagery that we're seeing here. How, if you don't mind me asking, how was that reception?
I'm very lucky. My family has become quite supportive. I think once they realized that this is like something I was taking like very seriously as a career, they kind of, yeah, and like, I'm not asking them for money, so it's like they like, I think they're quite supportive. I think they're okay with not getting it 100%, but they kind of do. They do. I like have like some pretty cool conversations with my dad about this sort of thing. Actually, like it's like there's more common ground than you might think.
Do you think it's opened up his perspective in some way? Maybe. I
don't know. I mean, we send each other podcasts, my dad and I.
Will you be sending him this podcast?
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll find it. I think he has an Ask Steve Google alert set for me, so.
Techie family.
I was thinking about the galleries that you show at and kind of the community of artists, Half Gallery, Carl Kostel. Like, it must be an exciting time right now to see a bunch of kind of younger painters, emerging painters starting to find their way through this kind of contemporary art landscape.
Yeah, what's the point of like living in a simulation if you're not going to make it fun? Like, yeah, no, I'm having a great time. Like I said, this is the universe I would create for myself. Like, as to your point, I think there's so much good art being made right now. I don't know if that was always the case, but I think it's a very exciting time to be a painter, not just because we're all in good company, but I think also the tools available to us at this point like allow us to make really good and interesting work. My good friend Canyon Castater, he talks a lot about this, about how we have to kind of free ourselves from this prison of traditionalism where there's somehow something more admirable or more noble about not using technology to make paintings, and like what a silly concept that is, because even back to like a camera obscura, like people were freaking out about that.
Every artist in every era used some sort of technology that was afforded to them to make their paintings better. I mean, we can go back to current. David Hockney uses technology in ways that's very, very fascinating and interesting. So it seems so ridiculous to not use the tools that are available.
Use every tool available.
Have you ever thought about trying to create one of your paintings by removing the 3D render part of the process and going analog and just doing it from scratch and setting up a scene like a kind of like a photo shoot?
Yeah, totally. And I do that once in a while. Every once in a while I'll like go to the Met with a sketchbook. I mean, just to prove to myself that I still can. But I mean, like drawing from observation, like it's just a pencil and a sketchbook. Like that's my bread and butter. Like that's where I kind of like learned how to make art. And I think if I ever lost that, I think it would probably be apparent. Like it's I'll say de Kooning did this retrospective, like, God, it must be almost like 8 years ago now. But I remember I was never really a big de Kooning fan because I always just, like, I didn't really get it. And I thought that, like, I didn't see anything particularly skillful in his paintings. And, like, I never really gave him much time, like, to be fair. But I went to go see this retrospective and there was this one piece, because I guess he started off in advertising. He was doing drawings for advertisements, and there's this one piece kind of right at the entrance of the retrospective that, like, I think most people probably would have missed because it certainly wasn't a central piece in the exhibition, but I was so drawn to it because it was a perfect drawing of a tea kettle. Like, it was beautiful, and it really like changed the way I saw de Kooning, because all of a sudden I was like, okay, he can draw like that when he just chooses not to. And now I was totally converted after seeing that drawing. And whether or not it comes through in an obvious way, I think that it's not just like ways of drawing, it's ways of seeing. I think if you have that, it comes through in maybe some indirect ways, but it's there. So I don't know, I think it's important. I don't think that these technologies and these tools that we're discussing, like, I don't think they're instead of, I think they're in addition to.
You're listening to Radio Juxtapoz in conversation with Emma Stern, aka Lava Baby. Stay with us in this final section as we explore the metaverse together and try to get to the heart of the true, authentic self, right here, right now, on Radio Juxtapoz. We've talked about this idea of these characters being extensions of yourself in some capacity. Is this why we haven't yet seen any male characters appear? And if they haven't appeared in the public forum, are they being made in the studio, and what's holding them back from appearing in the public forum?
I have a folder.
Yes, everyone's got a dirty folder.
You know what? This is my little universe, and right now it's perfect. So why would I fuck it up with men? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I
you don't have to be kidding, by the way.
No, I know, but like, I want to be very deliberate with like what I introduce into this universe, because the characters, like, I think I don't know if this is obvious to anyone, but like some of the characters that I use are recurring, and some of them know each other, and there's like one character in particular that like I feel like I've been using over and over again, and so everything I introduce is sort of like a permanent addition to my universe, and I don't know why, and it's just like kind of the way I've been doing it, and I've been kind of beginning to incorporate kind of like fiction writing into this, and it's all just part of the artifact. Like, you know, it's a world building project, and I think of the paintings as kind of artifacts of this like one little like solid piece that I can pull out of this immaterial world that I'm building. And I think of the short fiction as part of that as well. And every character that gets introduced shifts the equilibrium, I think, in a way, or destroys the equilibrium, and that's fine, but it's like very much a little petri dish, and so I'm very thoughtful about what I introduce into it.
If you do a commission, do people ask for certain characters?
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've done a commission. I mean, I had to do someone's wife as a sexy nurse once, which was pretty fun. They were like, "Do you want to do a commission?" And I was like, "No, I'm not doing commissions." They're like, "Well, it's his wife as a sexy nurse," and I was like, "Okay, fine." So, No, I had a lot of fun with that. People want something specific sometimes. I don't know. Like I think lately what's been really fulfilling for me is kind of rather than to do the draw similarity with like people who make music. Like I've been having a lot more fun making albums rather than singles lately, and so thinking of things as an exhibition rather than as individual standalone, because then I get to really like think about these characters and their dynamic and like what's the backstory. Is there a backstory, or did they just kind of like pop into existence as these like adult women? Like I don't know, like it's, you really get to kind of play with fantasy in a way that don't if you're being realistic. I don't know. I'm not closed off to the idea of doing commissions, but it's been really fulfilling for me to kind of flesh these stories out more.
This is another time, like you have this dichotomy going on here where like you just mentioned albums instead of singles. You've mentioned the fact that like, even though you're working with very current tech, you're also painting like in a very, very traditional medium. You have this dichotomy of like real life traditional and very, very much non-traditional. Is that something that remains very important to you, is to like to make sure that like as you have these conversations about avatars and tech and all these different worlds, like that the hand is still very, very much involved?
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know if, I guess there's this part of me that is like really a romantic when it comes to painting, like, but that's not like, that's like an emotional attachment, and it's like I don't know if there's really much logic to it. It's like I'm a Cancer, okay, like
I gotta look that up. I don't know what that means.
I'm learning a lot about cancers tonight.
I don't know.
They act upon emotion. That's what I'm told anyway. No, I think I do have like an emotional attachment, but like not a philosophical attachment, if that makes sense. I don't know. I don't think I'd be that like pissed off about being like a brain in a jar, honestly. Like I'm down for the microchip.
Are you excited about the metaverse then? And if so, what excites you about it?
Are we talking about like metaverse, like Facebook
fuck.
trademark?
I really don't know enough about this. I didn't come that prepared.
About like the metaverse.
Talking about Mark
like,
Zuckerberg's
I'm exhausted.
Vision.
No, but it's like it's so unfortunate because like the metaverse was a thing before it kind of like got co-opted by Facebook.
That's so unlike them.
I know. Who would have
How out
thought?
of character.
How about steal everything that everyone's ever done and make it their own?
Zuckerberg? No.
Wait, he doesn't own any of the podcast platforms we use, right? I don't think so.
Oh, he probably does. Sorry, sir.
No.
Sorry, as you were saying.
Sorry, Dad. I mean, I haven't seen any like evidence like that to convincingly suggest that we're not like that it's not all metaverse already, and we're just kind of like it's like another layer on the layer cake. I don't know.
Okay, shit.
I know.
You're taking the blue pill.
Sorry. But no, I mean, I am excited about it. And like, this like takes up a lot of like brain space for me. Like I like kind of considering these things. And I guess like whatever kind of anxiety or excitement or a combination of both that like elicits from me, like I think that's like ultimately what I'm trying to like work out in these paintings that I'm making and in these universes that I build and in these kind of iterations, like self-portraits that I create. Like I think I'm like trying to sort of work that out indirectly, and it soothes me in a way.
If I take you as a human as a human having a conversation,
how nice of you.
And then you as the way that you're presented, sorry, I don't know where this has come from or where it's necessarily going. If I take you as a person that we would have a conversation with face to face, and then I take you being presented as a virtual self through how you would present yourself on Instagram, and then you as a virtual extension of yourself and how you would be presented within one of your gallery shows as an extension of your quest for the self, is there a difference between these ways of presenting yourself?
We don't rehearse this, by the way. Ever.
No, these are great questions.
I don't know if
that was really fucking good. I was feeling that. That was good.
I think it's great. I'm going to do my best to answer, but I have kind of you like it's all a self-portraiture project, I think, and especially like I've started thinking of my social media persona, like whatever and whoever That is, and then this is not something that I did deliberately, by the way. This is something that has kind of been emergent, that I've only recently been forced to sort of like analyze and consider, like in an intellectual way. But I mean, it's an extended performance piece. But I mean everything is. I think if you are an artist, I'll speak just for myself. Like for me, when I decided I was going to be an artist, art is life, life is art. And so this, like how you live and the way you present yourself, I think of it as an extended performance piece. And I think, like, especially in the case of social media, like, I mean, your social media persona is an avatar for sure, because it's this hyper curated version of yourself that you present with intention. This is not real life. This is not who you are, but it also is. It's like, I mean, I look at my screen time and it's absolutely shocking. Like, so I'm spending these hours and hours and hours a day as this version of myself. Is that any less real than the version of myself that my mom sees when I go to New Jersey and visit her for dinner? Like, it's like, I don't know how, and let's be honest, like when we're around our parents, we are a different version of ourselves.
I was going to say that the seeing your mom is probably the least authentic version of all them. You're like clean, you're like well rested. Hi mom. Oh, everything's nice.
No, but it's true. And that's like, I think about this a lot. It's like we present different versions of ourselves depending on the scenarios we're in, depending on who's around. Like, is this professional? Is it 3 a.m. at the rave? Like, where are we? And these are different versions of ourselves. And I think this is sort of just like the analog version of creating an avatar. And you have this repertoire of selves. And then when you make that virtual, it's just a more extreme fantasy-based version of that, I think.
A repertoire of selves. Emma, you are fucking like... Shit.
I might have thought about this before a little bit, yeah.
Good, because we haven't.
No, it really is an eloquent way of putting how the 21st century is shaping the self.
I know that you've said at the start that this isn't like there isn't necessarily an active critique of gaming culture. In your experience of having gone through these places, is there one really surprising positive thing that you might have seen through these communities?
Well, I think the real thing that I've realized is that there is like a very like kind of reptilian primitive brain attraction to certain things that just like kind of are nice to look at. It has nothing to, it's like the guy in his mom's basement, and then also like me. Like, we're both looking at the same big titty anime horse girls at the end of the day. And we're both kind of like getting like I think if you allow yourself to enjoy these things, then everybody can. I don't know. I think there are some things that are just fun to look at.
I think that's a nice way of putting it.
I'll ask my last question. It's just simple enough. Like, is the studio empty right now? Like, what are you heading into?
No, the studio's not empty. So I have a two-person show opening September 10th in Paris at New Gallery with my friend Salome Chatriot, who is an incredible painter, sculptor, performance artist. The work we make is like pretty visually different looking, but we're both very interested in similar things. So she's amazing. And our two-person show is called Your Favorite Weapon, and that opens September 10th. I have this last painting that's going to ship as soon as it's dry. And then I've got stuff for the winter fairs that's just getting revving right now.
And then I'll plug. You are a featured artist, 8 pages in the fall 2022 quarterly that comes out first week of September, right when your show opens.
Yay! Perfect. And I have to say, I'm so excited. Like, I think Juxtapoz was like really like so formative for me when I was like growing up and kind of realizing that I wanted to make art for the rest of my life. I remember my first boyfriend ever worked at like a gas station, and he would like steal all the back issues for me, and it was like the highlight of my month every month. So gotta say, it's pretty exciting for me.
That's the best. And it's like, it's really good because like these conversations here, like the way you're talking about all these different modes of technology and what you do is really, I believe, very inspiring for people who are navigate where to go in the art world with their passions. So thank you. It's so good.
That was Emma Stern, aka Lava Baby, in conversation with Evan Preco and myself, Doug Gillen, here on Radio Juxtapoz. We will put links to Emma's Instagram and all the relevant information for forthcoming exhibitions in the show notes of this episode. To see us out today, I've managed to pull out a little clip from Alan Watts, who Emma mentioned earlier in the episode. If you aren't familiar with Alan Watts, it is a real joy of a wormhole to fall into on YouTube. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
Underneath the superficial self, which pays attention to this and that, there is another self, more really us than I. And if you become aware of that unknown self, the more you become aware of it, the more you realize that it is inseparably connected with everything else that there is. That you are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies. And that vast thing that you see far off, far off, far off with telescopes, and you look and look and look, one day you're going to wake up and say, "Why, that's me." And in knowing that, you see that you never die. That you are the eternal thing that comes and goes, that appears now as John Jones, now as Mary Smith, now as Betty Brown, so it goes forever and ever and ever and ever.